The Rings of Power have tried various different marketing strategies, but today we're in for a new one, where the showrunners are just blatantly lying. How gullible and ignorant do they think the fans are today? Let's find out, shall we? The Lord of the Rings of Power showrunners address rumours, just rumours, not facts, that modern politics will influence the show. Today, the showrunners piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining. Oh, it's gonna be good. You see, the show aspires to be timeless, just like Tolkien's work, and the way it's going to be timeless is just by injecting modern-day politics into it and modern-day ideas. Yeah, they're not gonna age like spoilt milk. Now, of course, according to the showrunners, they're not doing that. But to believe that, you'd have to disbelieve everything they've said previously. So were they lying before, or are they lying now?
And I, as an activist, I tapped into what I believe women are doing for my homeland.
There are two very common bad faith tactics. The first is just accuse your enemy of what you're doing. People have a natural tendency to trust whoever accuses the other person first. But the other part of that is taking on the moral principled position, even if you don't actually hold it themselves, which is what we have here. There are online rumours that modernity will influence the story, but that's not the case apparently. This was one of Tolkien's key debate points with C.S. Lewis. It was very important that what he was creating was not allegory. He was not commenting on historical events of his time or any other. He was not trying to transmit a message that spoke to contemporary politics. He wanted to create a mythos that was timeless and would be applicable. That was his word, applicable. The applicability across times. Now, unfortunately, they don't quote the letters, so we can't get any context from it. And that means that this one word, applicable, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's one of the ways of crowbarring open just enough mystery, just enough doubt, so that anyone that raises any of these points, someone will come along and they'll quote the word applicable and just be like, no, it's not actually influenced by anything, it just happens to be coincidentally applicable. I mean, the solution to that problem is the same way you treat anyone else, you just step over them while laughing. But the problem is they've already destroyed their own argument, because this word applicable here, they haven't referenced the letter, so I can't see the rest of the context. But in SDCC, they did use it in context, so I don't have to use Tolkien's reference point. Let's just see what they think they can do with the word.
If you have one, do you have a favorite, I'll say canonical event that is in the text of Tolkien from the Second Age that is your favorite moment?
The downfall of Numenor. Watching this kingdom in which there's this factionalization, these groups that are pulling apart the fiber of Numenorean society, it seems. It's so timely, just for our culture, but for any culture around the world. We see all these divisions happening. The story of the downfall of Numenor is deeply painful, but also maybe can be helpful because maybe there's something we can learn from it.
I think the word Tolkien might use is applicable. I think that was, yeah.
So we've made one show that just happens to be about a divided society where everyone's got all these different opinions and they're splitting apart, but really they need to all come together and be made to agree with our side. Otherwise, all of society will crumble if they don't agree with me.
Because maybe there's something we can learn from it.
Yeah, trust us, it's not political. It just happens to be applicable to the exact same thing that we think is happening in our country right now. Trust us, guys, we're not lying. He said, I dislike Allegory, the conscious and intentional allegory. If you can't win through honesty and principle, then you win by language games. Just redefine everything. Oh, we're not talking about modern day situations. It's not modern day ideals. No, these are timeless ones that just happen to be applicable to everything that's happening to us right now.
What I love about the writers on this show is that they have given every woman on the show such agency. We don't serve the men around us.
Presenting that revolutionary television moment, it is necessary for the world, for every single race and world that we live in, for females to be present.
Because Tolkien said one word and now we're going to twist it and run it into the ground. They continue, every single choice we've made at every turn of making this show has been faithful to that aspiration, because that's what we want as viewers. We don't want to adapt the material in a way that might feel dated. We aspire to be timeless. That's why the books still speak to so many people, and we aspire to do the same thing. And once people see the stories and characters and worlds in context, they'll feel the same way. Now, there are obviously timeless ideals, things like duty, stoicism, and gradual self-improvement. Earning what you have for delayed gratification, these are things which are applicable to all times and have no side. They're just objectively good. But the very example they used actually isn't timeless. A divided society that disagrees on things that has to come together to defeat evil isn't applicable, because Tolkien's world had an objective evil that everyone could agree was bad, and we don't. Divisions in the real world often come about because they disagree about what is evil.
She wants to subvert Harfoot tradition.
Whereas objective good versus evil is a part of Tolkien's world, and there is in his world a point where if you disagree, you're just wrong. And so the showrunners saying we can learn from it, and not only shows that they believe it to be an allegory. For instance, you can't learn duty from Aragorn. Aragorn isn't an allegory for anything in our world. But Aragorn, through his actions, can show to you that duty is good and beneficial to yourself and the world. Whereas the only thing you could learn from his comment about SDCC is that we should all unify under one belief. Guarantee you it's not going to be the one that he disagrees with. And that is the difference between allegory and applicability. And they're just using the words they want to use, rather than the accurate one, which Tolkien specifically said he didn't want in his work.
The state of the world being what it is, there was a lot in my mind, a lot in my heart, and Midiel for me was sort of the place to put all of my thoughts, both personally and just in terms of, everything going on in the world. And Midiel for me, there is really that sense of wanting to do right by her people and guide them. And
so if a timeless applicability refers to a concept which relates to someone's life in general across any length of time, whereas an allegory refers to a specific instance in the world, any allegorical reference will inevitably be political. At best, what you could do to balance it out is show both sides. And Tolkien didn't want to talk about either side in his works. He despised allegory at its very heart. It is unusual how the showrunners and people related to the show keep on referring to our real world pretty much constantly since marketing for this show has begun. Right from the start of the marketing in the original Vanity Fair article which spoke about Rings of Power, it felt only natural to us that an adaptation, note they say based on now, of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like. And that doesn't refer to Tolkien's world, that refers to the real world. That is an allegory. Although I've always loved the next part of the article where a Tolkien scholar says obviously there was going to be pushback, and then questions, who are these people? Who could possibly be concerned about the destruction of Tolkien's work and the injection of allegory, despite him specifically saying he doesn't want it in it? Oh yes, these are the Tolkien scholars who just don't care about what Tolkien wanted. I'd make a comment about 30 pieces of silver, but it's not as if they hire anyone that disagrees with them in the first place. Although if we did accidentally hire anyone that disagrees with us, we can get rid of them later. And then there's the article from Entertainment Weekly, which actually says that this allegory has been key to the show's DNA from the start, with Ada Robinson, who plays Muriel in the show, saying that to complain about this allegory would go against the very spirit of the source material, because for me personally as a viewer, I would have the expectation that the show would reflect the real world allegory, as well as the world that I aspire it to be, injecting your own beliefs into a classical work of literature that he specifically stated that he didn't want anyone to do. Allegory.
It's a very diverse cast, and a lot of us are firsts, so I took that to heart. I wanted to bring a little bit, a lot of myself, of my upbringing, and also my heritage.
It's key to the DNA of the show with one of the main actresses, as the expectation that it not only reflects the real world, but a perfect version of our real world as she would want it to be. Won't be influenced by modern ideas. Timeless. Now, of course, one of the issues with this is the same thing as anything else. All these quotes have come out over a long period of time of months, and they're spread over many videos and articles and interviews all over the internet. And finding them is even more difficult. This is why it's so easy to change your tone and just give a different quote, and people will point to that one, and it takes so much effort to go back through all of history, drag up every single quote which disproves them, and put them together in a video. But that is exactly what people rely on. It's so easy just to deny something and say source. It's an argument that comes from attrition of time. All I have to do is change my opinion, and then I just demand that you disprove it. It's very easy for me to say it, and very time consuming for anyone to disprove you otherwise. Of course, it is handy then that SDCC has come out, and there's just so many articles and interviews which directly go against what the showrunners have just said right next door. Because you are really going to have to prove to me how coming out and saying that my character is the face of necessary redress of balance has absolutely no real-life connotations. Oh, we are not trying to put forward a message with this one, that's for sure. Now, I've already gone through this article and spoken about the various amounts of nonsense that it's talking. So in this, we're just going to quote it and let it stand on its own, as Sophia Nomvet is the face of the necessary rebalance within the entire entertainment industry. She and Rings of Power will create accessibility for generations to come. We get in one of those lies about being first, but we are redressing the balance within film and television and the television industry. I hope this franchise moves a lot of other franchises forwards. We are changing the world and the face of the entertainment industry. But don't worry, we're absolutely not doing this for any modern ideological reasons. Nothing to see here. This is the version of Tolkien for new generations. This is what my daughter will see of his works. Oh, because we're not going to show him those classic works. Those have a lot of problems. They've got all of this classical, traditional, and non-allegorical references in them. No, what we want is the modern ideas. Because now, it's their time. All those people whose time it was before, we want you back in your box, get back in your corner. Now, it's time for me.
It's so great to be able to have so many faces now to extend the accessibility for people like me to see themselves staring back at them in such a huge franchise.
This is a reflection of the world we live in, the real world. This is an allegory. This is a time to peel back, learn, and educate, and be educated. Notice how entertain wasn't in any of those references. The Rings of Power showrunners address rumors that modern politics will influence the show. It was very important that what he was creating was not allegory. Actor Ismail says, "The awareness that has grown, the cinematic world that Peter Jackson created has immense value. But we've shifted lenses since then. We used to view the world through one lens, and now we've changed it. It's more modern, you could say. The conversation is different right now. No, now we've shifted lenses, and that lens alters the world as we view it. You're trying to look at this through a modern lens. People now expect to see the world globally represented. Tolkien was not commenting on historical events of his time or any other. He was not trying to transmit a message that spoke to contemporary politics. He wanted to create a timeless mythos. Every single choice we've made at every turn of this show has been faithful to that aspiration. You're trying to look at Rings of Power through a modern lens. Either we're all lying before, or we're lying now. Which one is it, showrunners? Because this video is just me. This is just what I can remember. There's a lot more people on the internet. There's a lot more quotes that can come out. Because maybe you should have listened to Gabe Newell, the CEO of Steam, when he said, one of the things we learned pretty early on is don't ever try to lie to the internet, because they will catch you. And this is from 9 years ago. You have to stop thinking that you're in charge and start thinking that you're having a dance. We used to think we were smart, but nobody is smarter than the internet. One of the things we learned pretty early on is don't ever try to lie to the internet. They will deconstruct your spin. They will remember everything you ever say for eternity. You see, really old school companies struggle with that. They think that they can control the message. So yeah, the internet in aggregate is scary smart. The sooner people accept that and start to trust that that's the case, the better they are going to be interacting them. You think you can pull one over on the fans. You think they'll forget. You think it takes too much time to go back and look at all your quotes and save all of your clips that you've made from all of your interviews and compile them into a place. And if it does, then, you know, that message probably won't get out to most people anyway. But your interview, that'll go out to millions. You're the real masters of PR. The thing is, across the internet, only one person needs to remember one thing, and then they share it with a load of other people who share it with a load of other people. And together, they will always catch you in your lies, and you can't just come out and blatantly lie to the fans. They are not as ignorant as you seem to think they are, and as you're treating them right now. Because not only are your words saying one thing and your actions showing another, but your words have also said another thing previously. And look, we know you don't actually care about the lore. That's why we can have things like Rings of Power as open to Ian McKellen coming back as Gandalf. Could McKellen return as Gandalf? Nothing's been ruled out. To Total Film, Weber said that the production team is open to anything with these characters. And that includes the potential return of McKellen as Gandalf. Who would say no to Ian McKellen? No one on the planet would say no to Ian McKellen. And the really interesting part to that, to me, is that we're open to anything with these characters, because you shouldn't be. You should be limited by the source material, and you shouldn't do anything that goes against the source material. Anything shouldn't be on the table. Otherwise, we can have Oreos being beamed down by the gods, and Mr. Blobby can come round and really be the creator of the rings. Anything should never be on the table. It is limitations which cause creativity, because once you have sorted out your limitations and the walls of where you're allowed to play, now you can focus on perfecting what remains. We cannot change this character, so let's do the best job we physically can to make him look as accurate as possible. That is what should have been at the forefront of your mind. mind. But instead what we get are you addressing rumors. They're just rumors, they're not true. We would never comment on historical events or try to transmit a message with our rings of power. There's just the huge breadth of quotes in the past that directly contradict it, including ones from last weekend. Oh, we've still got some of them left.
There are people discriminating each other, so there was a lot of parallels with real life and life imitating art.
Necessity for any great success story, there are females, and here I am.
With such a wide range of inclusivity in your characters, will there be any with physical disabilities as a proving point for that shows can include more actors with disabilities?
Yes, there will, and yes, there are. Thank you for asking that, and I love your ears. Those are beautiful. Just beautiful.
I dislike allegory, the conscious and intentional allegory. So no, you can't piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining, because nobody's that gullible, and nobody's that ignorant. People have actually read what you've said before, so you can't just go and change it and assume nobody knows. And know that this article and these statements were just put out there as bait. They were just put out there for someone to point to and go, no, they've said this, and that directly disproves you and all of your evidence. Because every time someone uses this as an excuse, it's going to be the attrition of time. It's going to be them assuming that the other person won't go to the effort to actually disprove them. And if they do, then they'll get bored of repeating it to every single person, which just points at the words and says, prove it, source. So for those people, I made a video, because I'm not going to argue that. Anyone that uses source or attrition of time arguments at me, you just ignore, because they're not actually arguing from a position of good faith. A lot like the showrunners themselves. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.